At 4:21 in the morning, 12 men stepped into a cold metal room, closed the door, and were never seen alive again. There were no gunshots, no screams on the radio, and no signs of smoke pouring out of the ventilation pipes along the roof. When security guards cut through the door seals 40 minutes later, they found 12 sets of empty clothes laying flat on the concrete floor. Their wallets, their boots, and their brass security badges were still sitting right where they fell, but the human beings inside them had completely vanished. You stare at the yellowed military log signed under file DOE 13, trying to understand how 12 adult men turn into empty air in less than 10 seconds. The official report stamped by the Defense Board claimed that a high-pressure line exploded inside the test bay and vaporized everyone inside instantly. But when you check the cleanup receipts attached to the back of the file, not a single piece of burned metal was ever taken away. If a massive fire broke out inside that room, why were their paper coffee cups still sitting untouched on the main work table? Ask yourself what kind of physical event can wipe 12 living people out of existence while leaving their shirts and pants perfectly folded on the ground. You look closely at the floor plans of Hangar 51, noticing that the walls were backed with 5 full feet of solid lead and heavy copper wiring. The engineers who built that bay were not trying to stop an explosion from blowing the doors off into the desert night. They were building a massive shield to keep a heavy gravitational field from leaking out into the rest of the facility. Look at the perimeter guard logs written down under code CIA 33 just moments before every single camera went dark across the entire base. The 4 guards standing outside did not hear a loud bang or feel the ground shake under their boots. They logged a sudden wave of freezing air that turned the desert night into a thick fog while their wristwatches stopped ticking completely. Inside the perimeter fence, every backup battery drained down to 0 in 3 seconds flat, dropping the lights and plunging the whole north sector into blackness. When you turn to the physical weight logs recorded by underground sensors built into the foundation, the entire official story falls apart right before your eyes. The concrete floor inside the bay was clean, smooth, and completely free of any burn marks, blood, or structural cracks. Yet the total weight of the hangar dropped by exactly 780 kilograms the second the lights went out. That number matches the exact combined weight of those 12 scientists and the central metallic core they were testing. If you listen to the audio spool recorded inside the bay, you hear Project Supervisor Dr. Edward Vance running through a routine checklist with his team. His voice sounds steady, low, and completely calm as he turns up the voltage being fed into the heavy gray sphere in the center. You hear the deep, heavy hum of transformers vibrating through the steel frame of the building behind him. But at minute 4 of the tape, Vance stops talking, his voice dropping as he tells his assistant that the shadow under his chair is moving. That single line on the recording forces you to pause the tape and pull up the technical notes locked inside the NRO 55 intelligence folder. The metallic sphere sitting on the test rig was not built in a laboratory or manufactured in any factory on Earth. It was a smooth, dull gray piece of metal recovered from a crash site in the New Mexico desert 2 decades earlier. For 20 years, top scientists could not scratch its surface or cut through its skin until this team decided to pump raw electricity straight into it. You begin connecting the biological tracking notes wired to the men's chests with the power graphs recorded by the main generator station down the road. As the power input reached 40,000 volts, the heart rates of all 12 men jumped to over 160 beats per minute at the same time. Their body temperatures dropped 4 degrees in less than 20 seconds, as if the heat inside their skin was being sucked straight out. They were not running for the exit doors. They were standing frozen in place, watching the air around the sphere bend like hot glass. What happened next was wiped from public records and buried deep inside a secret section of the energy archives for over 50 years. The voltage meters did not short out. They dropped straight to 0 as the gray sphere began pulling power directly out of the ground beneath the building. The concrete floor started vibrating at such a high frequency that the water inside the men's ears stopped working, destroying their balance completely. On the tape, you hear Vance whisper a final phrase right before the recording cuts to static. "It is pulling us down." Then came the silence, an absolute, heavy quiet that lasted for 8 long seconds, while base radar logged a strange magnetic spike directly over the roof. Tracking systems at the nearby range picked up a sudden drop in air pressure right over the hangar, as if a hole opened in the middle of the sky. When the backup diesel generators finally kicked back on and restored power to the lights outside, the room was sealed tight, cold as ice, and totally empty. The 12 smartest minds on the base had been erased from the world. Now look at what the recovery team found when they burned through the door locks with torches 40 minutes after the power went out. As the heavy steel doors swung open, A thick layer of white frost covered the inside walls and the metal latching pins. The cold air pouring out into the hallway smelled like fresh ozone and old metal, making the guards cough inside their rubber masks. On the main work table, 12 sets of leather boots, lab coats, and brass name tags sat in neat lines, completely undamaged by heat. Think about what those empty clothes really mean as you go through the physical evidence tags attached to the shirts and pants. The men were not burned or destroyed by heat, because the light cotton threads and plastic buttons showed no signs of damage at all. The flesh and bone inside those clothes simply stopped existing in the same physical space as the fabric at 4:22 a.m. It was like someone reached into the room and pulled the physical mass of 12 human beings right out of their coats. This is where your stomach drops, because you realize the government did not lock down Hangar 51 to cover up a tragic accident. They locked it down because the experiment proved that gravity is not just a force pulling your boots to the dirt, but a fabric you can bend. If you hit that fabric with the right frequency, you do not move through space, you drop right out of it. The 12 scientists did not die in a fire. They were pulled into a deep field gradient that human tools could not track. Hit the subscribe button right now and leave a comment below if you want us to keep pulling raw files and breaking down these hidden cases every week. Your support is the only thing that keeps this channel digging through buried logs, cutting through official lies, and bringing you the real story. Look at the domino effect this single test had on military spending and secret research projects over the next 30 years. Within 48 hours of the incident, every paper, notebook, and personal diary belonging to those 12 men was taken from their homes by federal agents. Their families were told that their husbands died in a plane crash over the ocean during a routine flight. No bodies were ever brought home, no funerals were held, and their names were quietly erased from every university registry across the country. Why go through all that trouble to erase 12 top scientists from the history books as if they never walked the earth? Because admitting what happened inside Hangar 51 meant admitting that scientists unlocked something they could not control or understand. If rival nations found out that a simple energy pulse could make solid matter drop out of space, the whole world order would change overnight. The lie was created to keep the public from realizing how fragile the floor under their feet really is. Look at the clock test records taken from the basement control room beneath the hangar 5 days after the site was cleared out. A mechanical watch belonging to Dr. Vance, which was left behind on the main table, was still ticking inside a sealed bag. But when engineers compared it to the master atomic clock on the base, the watch was running 47 minutes behind real time. That small metal watch spent 8 seconds near the sphere, and in those 8 seconds, time itself slowed down to a crawl. Here is the most terrifying detail pulled from the Groom Lake archives long after the facility was closed and stripped of its equipment. In the summer of 1982, engineers used deep radar tools to scan the solid rock foundation beneath the old floor of Hangar 51. Directly under the spot where the gray sphere sat on its metal stand, 20 feet down inside solid granite, the radar picked up 12 human-shaped outlines locked inside the stone. They were not buried in a pit. Their atomic structure was fused directly into the hard rock itself. The real truth of what happened during those final 8 seconds hits you like a cold wave running down your spine. When the sphere pulled power from the Earth, it did not send those men to a distant star or burn them into dust. It shifted their position downward by 20 feet while turning the hard rock beneath them into a fluid state for a fraction of a second. The 12 scientists were folded straight into the granite foundation, trapped forever inside the deep stone of the desert basin. You close the thick file folder and sit back in your chair as the quiet room settles around you in the dark. The military did not abandon Hangar 51 because the test failed. They abandoned it because it worked with terrifying precision. They poured 10 feet of solid concrete over the floor, welded the doors shut, and removed the building from every official map. The gray sphere was moved to a deeper vault underground, where no human team would ever be allowed to touch it again. Now that you know what really happened under the desert floor of Groom Lake, look down at the solid ground under your own feet tonight. We go through our daily lives believing that the floor beneath us is solid, permanent, and safe from the wild laws of nature. But the records from Hangar 51 prove that our physical world is just a thin layer floating over forces we can barely comprehend. The 12 men who walked into that room learned that truth in 10 seconds, and their mark remains locked in the dark rock below. The real question you need to ask yourself as you look out your window tonight is not how those 12 men ended up inside the rock. The real question is, if researchers have spent the last 60 years refining the gravitational tools found inside that room, what are they testing inside the hangars they operate today? Think about that as you watch the dark horizon tonight, because the line holding our solid world together is far thinner than anyone wants you to know.